going to begin this first session today. We have the pleasure to have with us Dr. Adubra. I'm going to introduce very briefly him. Dr. Adubra joined UNESCO in 2003 as program specialist in the Division of Secondary Technical and Vocational Education. Among other duties, he helped coordinate the interagency working group on secondary education. In 2006, Dr. Adubra transferred to the field in the Windhoek Cluster Office, where he led UNESCO education program in Angola, Lesotho, Namibia, South Africa, and Swaziland. He also coordinated the development of a close partnership in education between the Southern African Development Community and UNESCO field offices in the sub-region. He later assumed the interim of the director of the Windhoek office in 2009, before later being appointed back to headquarters as the chief of UNESCO section for teacher policy and development. Prior to his international career at UNESCO, Dr. Adubra had spent over 16 years of his professional life as a teacher trainer, and a high school principal in his home country, Togo. He holds a dual doctoral degree in educational administration and comparative and international education from the Pennsylvania State University. So please, Professor, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I must first of all apologize for joining you only today when I'm sure you had an interesting beginning yesterday. The reason is very simple. UNESCO had its executive board meeting, which was ending yesterday. And as a chief of session, I was not authorized to travel while the member states are at our headquarters to discuss key issues related to our program. The second reason, which is also something I'm very pleased to see there, is 2 days ago, that is on the 5th of October, was World Teachers' Day. So I was busy organizing the commemoration in Paris, and I'm glad that at this forum, you remembered the day, and it was there in the poster announcing or showing this conference. So it's a mixed feeling for me, disappointed but also happy that a group of people thinking about teacher issues are gathered here and remembered to associate UNESCO to this. Can I have my presentation? It's on. Do you mind, Chair, if I stand up?
No, on the contrary.
I think it's...
Do you want me to...
Yes, please. It's a teacher's habit for me to stand up. I was a teacher, so I've kept that habit. We have all seen that teachers are gaining growing importance within the international arena. At global level, there are major education development fora which gradually underscore the important role of teachers. Even in the 2000 World Education Forum in Dakar, teachers were mentioned. The EFA high-level group, which was set up to coordinate the implementation of the EFA goals, in 2008, they decided to set up an international global alliance to dwell on teachers. So there was a creation in 2008 of the International Task Force on Teachers for EFA, Teachers for Education for All. And we have donor countries, we have member states, we have private agencies, and then we also have beneficiary countries which are part of this international task force hosted at, the Secretariat is hosted at UNESCO in Paris. The World Summit on Information Society also mentioned the role of teachers for access to information for all and the role they can play in ensuring that new opportunities for learning and communicating are disseminated and shared through the young people in the best setting for acquiring knowledge and skills, schooling. UNESCO often organizes several world conferences, and over the past 2 years, there have been the International Conference on Education held in Geneva, which focused on inclusive education. And there was a mention of how we are not going to exclude people and how we must bridge the digital gap. The International Decade of Education for Sustainable Development also referred to technology and teachers. Confintea, which is the Adult Education and Literacy Conference, World Conference, was held in Belize in Brazil, also put the emphasis on this dual role of technology, education, and teachers. Well, the World Conference on Higher Education, which was held in Paris, you can be sure that has a whole setting, a whole mention of strengthening the capacity of teachers to use technology and also use technology for research to support the lower levels of education, that is secondary, basic education, and ensure that the generation that we have today is prepared to garner the potential of ICTs to learn and become civic citizens with high values. Finally, the first ever conference on early childhood care and education, which was held in Moscow last year, also addressed the same issue. The Millennium Development Goal Summit, which was held last year in New York, specifically addressed the importance of education. You know that there are only 2 goals in the Millennium Goal that talked about education. But we realized, and at the highest level of the United Nations, it was realized that education has bearing on all the other Millennium Development Goals, and one of the key players within that education sector are teachers. Finally, more recently, the ECOSOC regional meetings held in the Arab region, in Asia, in Africa, and then the final report review meeting, which was held in Geneva last July, again reinforced the role of education in the light of the social economic crisis that we are encountering today. Sorry. Technology. I need your help, please, Chair.
Do you want to backwards or
To forward.
forward?
Yeah.
Is it here?
Yes, thank you. In light of all those, teachers are a priority for UNESCO. And UNESCO approaches its mandate globally as the UN mandated agency for education, has 5 functions. It organizes its work as a laboratory of ideas, including foresight. When you gather here to share ideas, to groom new ideas for the future of education and society, UNESCO is pleased to play a role in bringing people together for that. UNESCO is also a standard setter, whether it's in the area of ethics, science, or human sciences. It sets standards in the use of technology. There are also standard setting role that we play. A clearinghouse, there is a wealth of information and resources around the academics and then produced by experts. So we have a huge library and internet library where we facilitate access to information for these new innovative ideas to be shared and disseminated. And finally, we play a role of catalyst for international cooperation. Cooperation in the sense that when countries, be they from the north or the south, from all member states, need to meet in the various areas of expertise that UNESCO has been assigned to play a role. So those are the 5 areas. The reason why I reminded you of this here is everything we do with regard to education, with regard to teachers, follows these 5 functions that we want to honor. This is the website for the teacher education section of UNESCO. Our program is articulated around training and management, how to train teachers, how to manage educational system within, through the angle of teacher management. Policies and quality assurance. We support countries to devise policies that use the latest technologies, use the latest knowledge and information, use appropriate data to plan the education system for the deployment, recruitment, and the promotion of the status of teachers. Gender has a central role in our program, gender equality, and that's why we convinced our partners that on World Teachers' Day this year, we made the theme Teachers for Gender Equality. And I will open parentheses here to say what we meant by that, and then we will soon post all the presentation and resources that were produced during the day. Teachers for Gender Equality means what? We first wanted to dig into the distribution of teachers along gender lines within the teaching force. And during the discussion, I can tell you more about what the findings showed. The second dimension of this theme, of this topic, is how can teachers contribute to ensuring gender equality in society and within education, first of all. We have ICTs features well there, HIV/AIDS through the lens of teachers and World Teachers' Day, and we have also teachers' prizes to make sure that innovative practices regarding teachers are recognized, promoted, and made known to a wider public of users and decision makers. This is the site of information education and information technology. UNESCO has 5 sectors. The first and largest one is education. The second one is science, natural sciences. Third, culture. Fourth, social and human sciences. And fifth, communication and information. So there is a particular intersectoral connection between the education sector and the science sector. We work closely with the science, communication and information sector to get from them the expertise on the new technology or the technology, tout court, as they say in French, and how we can garner that technology to ensure and promote better and quality education for all. That collaboration is one of the healthiest that I can testify about that we have at UNESCO. We can also have that as an illustration when I go to my future slides. Okay, I mentioned the regulatory and the standard setting role that we played. Most of you here must be aware of the ILO and UNESCO recommendations about the teaching profession. The first recommendation in 1966 talked about the status of the recommendation about teachers in general. And then UNESCO alone promoted a recommendation on teachers in higher education in 1997. So these two recommendations, they are not conventions. So member states who signed them are not obliged to implement. So there is no pressure, no compulsory requirement to apply. But the recommendation serve as a guideline for policymakers and teachers' union to know what the roles and responsibilities of teachers are and how their rights could be protected. I don't want to dichotomize the thing, but teachers' union like these recommendations a lot. Policymakers and ministries of education fear them to some extent because they know that there is a gap between what these recommendations set for making the profession, the teaching, a very recognized of high status profession, and what they are able to afford. The recommendations are not adopted and then are sitting there. There is a committee of experts, a bilateral committee set up by high-level experts from different angles. Some members of this committee, which we call CEART, are from legal background. Some of them are for training, teacher training background. Others are still on other issues that are important in the status, financing, economics of education. So this committee of experts meet once every 3 years. The next meeting will be in October or September 2012 in Italy. So we hold these meetings once at UNESCO, once at ILO headquarters in Geneva. So this committee receives complaints from member states or organizations about breaches of contract between employers and employees with regard to teachers. It also explores new ideas, emerging trends that could constitute a potential for reinforcing the teaching profession or a threat to teachers' status. And when in that area we come to ICTs, the use of ICTs, there is a huge watch out attitude played by some teachers regarding the way some people see ICTs as having the potential to replace teachers. So the bottom line here is ICTs are tools and they could never replace teachers, even though we are experimenting new ways of classrooms without teachers. So we don't know what the future has in stock for us, but what UNESCO will reinforce and stress is to make sure that the human and the interaction aspect of teaching and learning environments are maintained. We also work not just in setting normative instruments, but in capacity development. And with regard to ICTs, we assist in the development and adaptation of online tools and resources with a focus on open educational resources and guidelines for effective use of ICTs. When we talk of ICT use, the link between the learner and the teacher or the learning community, since we are talking about teachers also as learners today, is the curriculum to some extent. How is this curriculum fabricated? How do we ensure that in developing curriculum processes and substances, the role that ICT can play is well defined, the maximum use is made, but the minimum influence of the negative aspects are covered. Education for sustainable development is a broad concept. It has a cultural dimension, it has an economic dimension, and then it has also a social and environmental component. How do we ensure that the way we consume, the way we learn, we mobilize our youth today and adult and societies and communities to interact with the environment, how do we ensure that the tools, among other things, computers, mobile phones, we mitigate the negative aspect of those on the viability of the life of future generation. This is why we mainstream ESD, or Education for Sustainable Development, in the use of the technologies and things we do. You know, there are also countries which are in difficult circumstances. So these countries don't like to be called, as some people say, fragile state. But whether it's after natural disaster or after conflict, human-made disasters, there is a need to reconstruct the educational system and the educational population. Teachers are among them, infrastructures are among them. So there is a lot of work that the experts working in different fields of education, of teacher professional development, needs to bear in mind in developing their programs. In managing educational system, we still have in some countries places where the data and everything about the school system is manually collected, manually recorded. At this age today, we should be able to capacitate our school management, education management system to use these new technologies and monitor better in a time-effective manner how the population, the educational population, educational arena is functioning. So the third aspect of our work is advocacy and promoting partnership. And I mentioned World Teachers Day and the theme that we discussed. There are a number of intergovernmental organizations with which we work. There are also bilateral and multilateral public partners. Private partnership we have with Microsoft, Intel, James, Hewlett-Packard. I must confess something. The UN, for a long time, has feared interacting with the private sector. And when the discourse about public and private partnership started to aggressively go into the framework of development policy making, people were not sure how that could be better managed. So through innovative ways and dialogue with this private sector, UNESCO has managed to have products that are being used in many countries, be they developed or underdeveloped, to use and train teachers. At the World Teachers Day in Paris 2 days ago, there was a stand by Intel Teach program that some of you must know here. We have the ICT's competency framework for teachers, which is co-developed by UNESCO and these private agencies. I will, to that end, now say how internally to UNESCO, we are organized to address teachers' issues and ICTs in teacher professional development. My division, my section, which is in the division of planning and development of education systems, is like the hub. We coordinate the work of the various units which have small activities of initiative that have bearing on teachers. We have our regional bureaus. We have a big regional bureau for education in Africa based in Dakar, Senegal. And in that office, we have one person who is in charge of teacher issues on the continent. We also have Asia, a bureau in Bangkok, and they are very active in deploying and using ICTs for education. I have their website, which I failed to put here, where there are a lot of work done with some of you and done with some of the greatest experts in ICTs for education. Our UNESCO Institute of Statistics help us collect data on the school population, data on population, and making projection, making an estimate of what teachers' needs are, and also recording how resources, including technology resources, are used within educational system, so that we can see the scope of the use of the medium and the gaps or the surplus in some cases, as the case may be. ICBA stands for International Institute for Capacity Building in Africa. And one of their core mandate is to work on open and distance learning to promote teachers' professional development. The International Institute of Technology in Education is based in Moscow, and as their name says, it is particularly set to promote the use of ICTs and technologies in education. Their capacity might be limited at some times, but it's being reinforced so that it could perform and reach out globally. The International Bureau of Education is based in Geneva, and it's the center of expertise for curriculum development. So they are the ones who mainly coordinate how ICTs are included in the curriculum, both for school classroom curriculum and teacher training curriculum. I also talk about the intersectoral work we do with our communication information and science and culture and social and human sciences units. I just wanted to stop and give you a few examples of recent partnership we have developed around the use of ICTs. Last year, our Director General signed an MOU with GEMS Foundation, which is a large foundation working on education. And one of the activities is to launch a program to train 10 million principals, 10 million children, and to reach out for 10,000 principals in Ghana and Kenya. UNESCO has also signed a partnership agreement with Nokia for the use of mobile technologies to further goals of education for all. We talk about digital divide. The West African universities, there is a union, a monetary union, economic monetary union in West Africa, has advanced to sign an MOU of $12 million US with UNESCO to promote the use of ICTs in West African universities. That's a tremendous development. The reason why I'm giving these examples here is we need to bring the expertise and the knowledge of those of you who are playing a vanguard role in thinking through what is working, what is not working, so that the new aspect, the new commitment that UNESCO is making with whether they are government or private sector are guided by research findings and well-measured and well-apprehended policies. So practitioners like you are of important relevance to our work. I want to show this, which some of you also might be aware of. One of the initiatives we made is what I talk about, catalysts of international cooperation. This is the result of the working group, the thematic working group at the recently held Edu Summit. May I see by a show of hand how many people or who here had a chance to attend that Edu Summit in Paris in May or June last year? This year, it's this year. Okay. What I wanted to say about this group of experts, they brought experts from all around the world, and then they discussed issues. And one of the thematic theme was teachers' continuous professional development. And the challenges they saw, this model that was developed was that when you talk about teachers' professional development, continuous professional development, there should be an individual dimension. The individual teacher, does he or she know, commit to professionally developing himself or herself? Do we know what his or her motivations are? So there is an individual dimension to it. There is a need to know what the coaching and mentoring aspect are, and also the teaching methods that are applied at school level. So at individual level, at the organizational level, I'm talking about the red circle now, and then at policy and government level, we need to articulate these three layers to make sure that things are happening. And what the subgroup, the thematic group also mentioned, which I was very interested, is the missing voices. They say that very often we set in-service program, we develop continuous professional development policies and practices without even consulting the teachers whom we are addressing this to. So they are the missing voices in our arena, and then we do things, we talk to ourselves. We need to stop doing that. And then when we talk about teachers, we tend to generalize. Teachers, do we know what role an individual plays in his or her setting in that capacity we call teaching? Do we know what level of teachers we are talking about? Do we know what expectation of population of the local community and the population and the government we are taking into consideration to talk about the needs or the aspiration of teachers? So this circle, I find it interesting, this concentric circle, and I wanted to show it as one model of thinking through continuous professional development. This one is, you may not read it. I will make sure I share a one, but let me just read the recommendation. Focus on the fact that many challenges cut across context, differences in educational system, cultural practices and beliefs, which means that one needs to consider global, national, and regional differences when we gather like this, and then we issue recommendations or we produce the proceedings of our work. We need to take that into consideration. There were, at policy level, the recommendations were made at Edu Summit. At practice level, recommendations were also made. And at research level, I will read those completely. Funding for research should be focused on supporting practitioner research, particularly relating to IT and subject integration. That is what we are trying to do at UNESCO. I'm not saying we are the perfect model. We are not. We are far from that. When you have a pool of expertise in IT, technology, they know, they understand how this can work. But when you have on the other one, somebody who knows how education system should look like, you need the two to work together. If you come to the school level too, you have IT experts within the school, but the teacher who teaches a subject may not be knowledgeable about that. So in planning, teaching, the two group of personnel should be working together. This is what these items talks about. Engage pre- and in-service practitioners in research about IT and learning and teaching. Finally, develop better routes for sharing of expertise between practitioners, including the sharing of research finding and interesting practices. What are the implications of this for support to teacher professional development? So from my previous slide, involve teachers and learners in decision and innovative practices. Reinforce networks of professionals. promote dialogue between policymakers and practitioners, ensure more collaboration about poles of expertise. And this is where I want to tell you that the UNESCO chair has an important role in bringing together entities of its network and then having fora like this one to delve into that, those debate about continuous professional development of teachers. And I would like to conclude on these notes, just showing that we are following you closely. This is an international expert workshop, redesigning institutional practices and policies to ensure quality education through innovative use of digital technologies. It was held in June in Sofia, Bulgaria, and these are the objectives, and the objectives of these reports you could find on our website as well. I thank you.